first of all, some crosses will actually have a channel in the cross that gives definition, of course, in the centers at either end of that channel. If you have an incarnation cross gate on a defined center, that just is all about impact. It just increases what you're here to give and put out into the world. And you're not as dependent on other people's energy sometimes to live that out. There are a lot of crosses that don't have channels in them. And you might find, for example, let's say you have a gate that's highlighted by the sun that is obviously part of an incarnation cross that's a hanging gate on an open center. That's going to influence a lot about how that person is going to be exploring and learning about their incarnation cross and fulfilling their purpose. Part of what's going to happen is if you've got gates in an incarnation cross on an open center, the first thing that's going to tell you is that this is a person who's going to live out aspects of their journey, their hero's journey around their purpose through their relationships. They're going to be exploring that incarnation cross through those connections that they make, you know, in those hanging gates and on those open centers. If you see that big gates in the chart, like Sun Earth, are sitting as hanging gates on an open center, you know that you've got right there just a ton of gold that you can share with this person around relationships. And they're probably going to be feeling pretty stymied around feeling like they get lost in their relationships or their purpose gets lost in their relationships. And so, you know, that becomes a very big deal, that your relationship energy can oftentimes be deeply mingled with your feeling aligned with your purpose. And certainly I would say you want, if in general, a person who has incarnation cross gates on an open center and, you know, obviously a hanging gate on an open center, you really want to be aware of those gates, because if you're living out the shadow themes of those gates in your relationships, there's a really big lesson there around codependency and setting good boundaries in terms of being able to stay aligned with momentum and purpose. This is a really good place to insert an important disclaimer that you've heard me say before, and that I will say again. We have to take the chart apart to learn the pieces. But when you are looking at a chart, I want you to be really mindful of not over identifying with the parts out of context of the whole. So let's say you have an open fifth line, let's say you have a fifth line profile. Let's say you have a projector who's a fifth line profile. Let's say you have a projector who is a fifth line profile who has, let's say, the 36 defined as a hanging gate on an open solar plexus as part of their incarnation cross, right? That's giving you right there, that's giving you a lot of layers of information, right? You've got an incredibly sensitive, empathic person who has a deep inner awareness of how to manage and guide and direct others, who needs recognition and attention, right? That's just looking at base layer of type, right? And add to it, you've got, you know, an open emotional solar plexus, so that adds another layer of empathy onto it. You've got a solar gate, right? The sun highlighting the 36, which in the shadow is chaos, right? So let's say you've got somebody who's living the shadow of the elements of their type. That's not knowing when enough is enough, right? Struggling to get that recognition and attention. They've got the shadow of the open emotional solar plexus, right? So they've got all of that, either people pleasing or being the drama person, right? Being the person that's expressing all the emotions, and maybe expressing all the emotions is a way of getting attention, right? And then you've got a fifth line, so they start doing that stuff, and now people are projecting onto them. And on top of that, they are potentially leaping from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. That's the shadow of the 36. Or there's, as a result of that, all this chaos. And so they're struggling to figure out, like, how do I be more effective, and how do I not get overwhelmed by all these energies? These are just a lot of things you can learn just from those layers and how those layers play together, right? And so really, really important to look at the placement of those key gates in the incarnation cross on the centers and in the context of profile and type as well.